And welcome to In the Vine. Hey. I got some coffee. I feel alive. So hello, tis I. And with me today, I've got
Shekinah.
Cat.
Minaj.
I had to follow it. I had to do it.
You did. Good.
So what's today's question?
Today's question is, what is your biggest green flag in dating? Like whether you want to talk about experience or something that you like hope for. I'll start with Shekinah.
Oof. I feel like it's a job interview. My biggest weakness is I work too hard.
Wait. Are you taking it like or that you like to receive or both?
See, I was thinking about what I've been told, what my biggest green flag has been. That's how I took the question.
Oh, I did not take it that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
So that's good.
We could do it both ways.
What was the other way? What was the
Like
in another person?
yeah.
Okay. Maybe I can do both. Yeah, I can do both. Okay, so the compliments that I've received, I had to think about this so hard, was I think the most common thing that I've gotten is I really like that you're straightforward. Mm-hmm. And then I just tell it out as is. So that was my biggest compliment that I've gotten.
It's a big deal.
And in another person, the biggest, you're gonna have to come back to me because I have to think about it now. So,
Okay. All right. First round.
there's a lot of little
biggest
things.
green
I can
flag.
think of like a lot of little things, but I have to think of like, what's a good one? What do I want to be my number one?
Oh, he was number one. Okay.
So we're answering like rounds?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my biggest
ding,
ring,
ding.
like what I do.
Yeah. After we just talk about narcissism.
Yeah. This is a great follow-up.
Learned nothing.
So
My biggest, I think I've been told that like I'm very good at being considerate of people and not just like being like rude or like disregarding their feelings or like their emotions, like that I'm good at stewarding that and like being a safe place for that. That could just be me making this up for all I know. So.
Who said that? Give names.
That's what I thought on this one. Yeah.
Perfect. The people that she's dated are like, I'm just kidding. You really are like that. Okay.
Gosh, I did not think this
Clearly, I'm a narcissist. No. My biggest green flag. I'll tell you.
Start?
I guess what comes to mind is I'm like pretty sociable. So whether it's friendship or in dating, like just getting to know the person and like that comes pretty easy to me. I don't shy away from the questions or like if I'm asked questions or if I ask the questions. Just feel like I'm pretty easygoing in that way, I guess. So hopefully that's a green flag.
That's definitely your biggest green flags that you see in your words is
Yeah. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Oh, that Keurig coffee though, really coming in clutch.
What's your green flag?
My green flag.
she can quote SpongeBob or The Office in any conversation.
Yes. My biggest green flag was the communication part. Being able to, but communication with consideration. So, for example, like if I knew that I wasn't going to be available or that I just needed time, whatever, just like paying attention to how they would feel and being able to like respond to that as opposed to like react out of what I needed.
That's good.
Thanks.
True,
Anyway.
guys, true.
Hi, Peter. Okay, the next round is the other side of that coin. And I'm going to start with Kat to give you a little bit more time.
It's okay.
The
I'm
biggest
good. I
green
got
flag
it.
in dating, I think, is when the person has been like very straightforward with how they feel towards me, and that I didn't have to play games, and that they weren't playing games with me. Like from the bat, the person was like, "I like you. You seem interesting, and you're really pretty, and I want to date you.
Yeah.
and I want to get to know you more." So
Stop looking at me.
like that in itself, it just brought me like not security as in like in this person, but it brought me a lot of like security in the way like, oh, like I don't have to like guess with you. I already know where you're at. And
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's good. I went more tangible in like what they do or what they don't do. So I said when they pay for dates because I've been on dates where they weren't even called dates, more of like, let's hang out. Hate that. Don't say that. So that was definitely a green flag, is when they were willing to pay with no question, no, and it wasn't that awkward like when the bill came down.
Yeah.
Who's doing it? It was very much established that he was going to pay for the date.
Yeah.
Because
That's good. Yeah. That's a super green flag.
Amen. So those, but also for me, what came to mind was just being servant hearted, is someone who just is willing to jump in, help, serve. If I'm kind of looking, especially, being a church goer, I'm looking at how they're interacting at church, and are they willing to be helpful, and just fill in the gap and just, serve, essentially. Just someone who's very servant hearted.
That's good. I agree with all of those. My biggest green flag is more of like an emotional thing, is if I feel safe. I remember I went on a date once, and afterwards I was like crying because I was like, this is weird. Why am I feeling like this? And I was talking to Pilar, and I was like, oh, I felt safe. And she's like, yes, welcome. So that was pretty cool. With that being said, let's see, the next thing is, we're going to talk about settling. And can I just say, my opinion on this has changed from our very first season and our second season in which we discussed. So I'm like interested in hearing what perspectives come out. But Shekinah, what stirred me up in this conversation was actually a conversation that I had with you. And you were talking about how, wow, like in being treated like the woman that you are, has like opened up such a new, different perspective for you, or something along those lines. So would you care to share?
Yeah, just really briefly. I was telling Melissa that, I went on a date with a really, really great guy. And just that one date made me realize, oh my gosh, how much I settled in my last relationship, and how much I just let, go by. Because the bare minimum is expected, right? But then I went on a date with the guy who went above and beyond the bare minimum, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And it made me realize how much I neglected a lot of my worth and my value because like, he did the bare minimum, and that's hard enough to find in general, And so I met a guy who did the bare minimum, and I was like, oh yeah, like this is great, this is nice. But then I started dating a guy who went above and beyond the bare minimum, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, hold on. I've been eating at McDonald's this whole time.
They told me it was a good place.
Yeah, they told me I thought this was a great place until I went to an actual burger spot. But yeah, it's really where that conversation came from, is recognizing, how do you recognize when you're settling, especially when it is maybe the best you've personally ever had? How do you recognize that you might be settling for someone who just really isn't treating you the way that you deserve to be treated? And so for me personally, it wasn't until I got treated better that I realized that I was settling. But I feel like that's kind of, there has to be a better way.
Yeah.
So, there has, you don't want to go out and just date a bunch of guys in order to find out who,
Sure.
So I don't know. What were your guys' thoughts on that? Like,
Wait, I have a question for you.
okay.
Based on talking about love bombing,
Oof.
okay, how did you not feel like it was love bombing because you went from such an extreme in one relationship to a completely, like the complete
question.
opposite?
Yeah. Well, when I say above and beyond, it wasn't like over compliments. It wasn't like your experience with the hand holding and the baby it was just, to me, he was matching what my dad actually always taught me to expect. And so what I mean by that is he picked me up, got me flowers, opened the door for me, paid for my meal. And like, that seems pretty basic.
Yeah.
But what I was experiencing prior to that was just paying for the meal. You know what I mean? Like, and so it definitely wasn't love bombing because it wasn't over and beyond. And a big thing is it didn't make me uncomfortable at all. And so that's something that we talked about too in that episode when we talked about love bombing, is ultimately, are you comfortable, and are they matching your energy, and are they being considerate? And he did ask, are you okay with this? Are you comfortable? Is this, and not like, even that, he wasn't like
creepy.
He wasn't creepy, like, you good? You good?
Yeah.
You good? Like he wasn't insecure. It was just, every once in a while they'd be like, hey, are you comfortable? Is everything Checking in. And so I think that was a big thing that I noticed was just I went home to my dad that night, and I was like, Dad, you always taught me to like expect a gentleman, but I thought they were like, they faded into myth and legend. Like, you know, and I was like, he did everything you told me to expect. Yeah. And he went, yeah, you know? And so, it was just really great that, again, it was simple. It wasn't above and beyond but he opened the door for me. He picked me up. He, you know, it was one of those very classic, I think you shared a reel on this one time of like a real man will, you know, be ready by 7. This is what you wear. I'll take care of the rest. And that was the kind of date that it was. And I was like, whoa, this still exists? Yeah. In California?
Like that part right there. Yeah.
In California? Yeah, I didn't have to go to the South to find this, you know? So, yeah.
That's good.
That's a good question though, because a lot of people, you know, there's that line of like love bombing. Yeah. But ultimately I think I was able to differentiate that because it didn't make me uncomfortable and I didn't feel unsafe or like he was pushing any boundaries at all.
That's good. That's that discernment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about that is because I think
I want to know so you mentioned that your mind changed. What changed? Yeah.
So I think honestly, it really just depends on age, right? So for example, Kat, she's young. She's starting to build out her life and all these things. So meeting somebody that is doing the same thing that doesn't have like necessarily a house yet or a career yet or all these things, like it's understandable. However, there has to be a matching to the effort and there has to be a matching to the grind, to the excellence, to all those things, right? And so before, and I think I had, it's kind of like what you were mentioning, right? Like I had kind of accepted like an alternate, what is the word? Like option. We're thinking like, you know what? Like, yeah, it may not be exactly what I want, but I'm willing to build. Right. And so not that there's anything wrong with that, but my motive behind that was wrong. So, you know, I think sometimes like you're like, oh yeah, it's not exactly what I want, but I'm willing to like blah, 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 blah. And I think it comes down to what we were talking about in one of the other episodes where it's just like, well, where is that stemming from? Is it because you don't want to be alone? Is it because you're afraid of like losing them? Or is it because of this, because of that? And I realized, you know what, like, and I said it in one of our last batch of episodes where I was just like, if you feel like you need to change your identity for somebody, like then, especially in dating, right? Like then it's already kind of like a red flag. Because, and obviously I don't mean that you don't mold into one another and like all these, like there's a difference with that in the context of marriage. But I think in dating, when you already have to like shut certain parts of yourself in order to make the other person feel comfortable, is already like starting off in a bad place. So a very like basic stark example that I think that I can give is like, for example, like I'm a Christian, right? And one of the unfortunate things and also one of the biggest blessings that we have here in our church is that, dude, like the kind of revelation that we're fed, the kind of like expectation that comes from this house is like really like next level type of thing. Like it's not something that you would find at your average church. And so to find somebody that matches that caliber of discipleship, of discipline, of revelation is really difficult. And so in dating, right, I've had to face those questions where it's like, okay, am I willing to be with somebody that is not at that same caliber? Like, do I see them growing? Do I see them advancing? Like, am I willing to wait for the Lord to give them the revelation where it's like, hey, like you can have more than what you're accustomed to, like, you know, all these things. And before I was okay with that. And now where I'm in this place where, because I think about it, right? Because, sorry, I think I'm about to go on a little tangent, okay?
Go for it.
But I was just thinking about this today, okay? Because as a single woman, right, like in waiting and all these things, and I know there's a lot of women out there in that same season, and in waiting for a future husband, the Lord, for example, has asked me to wait a certain time period. And in some of my prayers, I'm like, I'm willing to do that as long as you do this. And the Lord has come through in like profound ways, like that I can even like, to me, they're super profound because they're intimate, right? They're from my innermost being. If I were to tell you, like, it's probably not as intimate, but like there's been prayers that I'm just like, I can't believe I just prayed that. Like in my own ability, like I wouldn't be able to be okay with that, right? And so, and I'm like, wow, like when this person comes, when this husband comes, when this person that the Lord has for me, they were of the caliber that all of these things had to be paid in order for me to get to this person, right? And so then that places that much more value on this person. Like, am I making sense so far? Okay. So then as I'm thinking about that, and as I'm like meditating on that, I'm like, wow, like there's been a high price that a lot of single women and married women have had to pay, right, in order to get to the promise, I guess you can say. And I'm like, I'm not willing to let that go anymore. And I'm not willing to make excuses for somebody else's inability to want more for themselves or to seek the Lord more for themselves, because I have had to pay a high price. And I'm like, and it's not something that I myself came to the Lord and be like, I'm going to pay you this. Like, it's something that the Lord himself was like, hey, this is going to require this. Are you okay with that? And me, right, I had to surrender that, and I had to say, yes, Lord, like, whatever you need, like, I'll do it, Not that the Lord needs anything from us, but there's a certain dying to ourselves, right? And so when you begin to realize the Lord places that kind of value on this relationship or on that, like, there's no way, right, that I would allow anybody to come into that and just be willy-nilly about it. And honestly, I've had to repent for times where I thought it was okay for me to let go of that, because I'm like, it appeases a certain part of my soul, and, I don't want to be alone or whatever the case may be. But when you look at it in the light of eternity, it becomes so different, right? It's like, and I've talked about this before about Hannah, right? When she had her baby, like, there was a difference where she was waiting and she was like praying and she didn't want to face all these things and blah, blah, blah. But suddenly she was like, Lord, you can have this baby. And suddenly the cost became much greater, right? And so now there's like this value put on the baby that she had because of all the costs that she had to pay. And so to me, so bringing it back to why it's changed because the value of the payment increased. You know what I mean? And so before, I thought it was somebody just, taking me in, when in reality, it's like, no, they're taking in my worship. You know what I mean? Like, everything that I've devoted to the Lord, this person is going to reap that benefit. And so, and vice versa, right? Like, anything that they've sown to the Lord. And so you're like, how much am I going to put a value on the things of the Lord, right? And settle or wait, And so that's why it's changed, because before I was like, man, like, you and I have talked about this, about potential, being able to see the potential in somebody, and, they can do this and you can do that. But there's this like sleeping giant in people that nobody can awaken except themselves, like not even the Lord, because we all have free will. And so if a person doesn't have the ability to, in that moment, right, further down the line, it's okay, but you can't wait on further down the line. Like, you really can't. Like, if you're in a covenant, if you're in a marriage, like, that's different. Like, you have no choice. But when you're dating, especially if you yourself haven't put yourself in that position, then, like, if you're, eating the manna, if you're doing all the things in order for you to get everything that the Lord has for you, like put weight on that. You know what I mean? Like, definitely put weight on that, on your sacrifices, because once I honestly look and be like, wow, I've had to pay all of that in order for the Lord to not I do this in order to get that, but where the Lord is like, just wait, just wait. Let's do this first. It's because the Lord sees it as something that's worthwhile. And so that's my 2 cents.
That was a whole $100 bill right there. I loved it.
Yeah, I've been meditating on that just these past 2 days, and I'm like, wow, Lord, because there's this one instance that I'm like remembering, and I look at the fruit of that now, and I'm like, I remember being in that room praying that prayer. It's crazy stuff. And I remember like watching myself pray this prayer, and I'm like I don't want to pray that. But seeing the fruit of that now, right? It's just like, Lord, like, you're so awesome, like, I'll pray that prayer 1,000,000 times over, And I think, it's been 13 years, right? And getting to this place has been a long battle, but once you begin to realize, like, you say this all the time, like, marriage is it's a picture of Christ, right? And in that book that I talked about the last few episodes, Marriage in the Light of Eternity, he said something so profound that convicted me to no end. And he was like, a lot of people, and we talk about this all the time, where he's like, a lot of people say it's God, husband, kids, and then the rest. He's like, yeah, there is an aspect of that. He's like, but there is this element, he's like, where people think that it's like, you just have to love God a little bit more than your husband. Mm-hmm. He's like, and that's not the case. It's God. Yeah. And that's it. Dude. Because even with that, right, he was like, and this one's going to be a little bit hard for people to swallow, okay? Mm-hmm. But it was even hard for me to digest. But he was like, there's these people that are like, Lord, I know that you want, they would rather, when we love somebody so much, we just want to be with them, right? It doesn't matter, you'll lose your job if you, if you really could, right? And he's like, and there's people that, although they love Jesus, they want to stay in heaven and earth because they want to see their kids grow up. They want to see their grandkids. They want to see all these things. He's like, but if you're radically in love with Jesus, you would want to be with him first. Yeah. And that was like, oh, my goodness, right? That's tough. That is literally taking up your cross and following the Lord, right? Because the word says, he who hates hate your father, your mother, and all these things. And that's obviously not being an enemy to them. But it means if you're not willing to let go of these things for the sake of Christ, even if there is a good relationship, then there's something still there, right? And it's not a shameful thing. It's just where we're at, and it's sobering and it's crazy because, and I can think of ample examples in the Bible to back this up, but I don't want to take too much time further, but it's just crazy. I'm telling you, that book, you guys need to read that book. Francis Chan, the Lord uses him with me in transitional periods in my life. So there's been maybe 3 or 4 messages that I've heard from him in the past 13 years. But I remember one in specific, I was avoiding for a long time. I would see the message come up and I would get so angry because I knew there would be a time where it would apply to me. And finally, one day the Lord was like, it's time. And I heard it and I was like, no, I'm kidding. It was really revolutionary. But that book, Marriage in the Light of Eternity, 10 out of 10, highly recommend.
I'll have to put that in the captions. No, that's something that I think the Lord is definitely doing something with that topic because that's something that I've been meditating on as well. God really just started, he put the thought in my mind, and something I've been meditating on since is it's not God and then. Mm-hmm. It's simply just God. It's not God and then, your next responsibility. It's just simply God in everything that you do. If it's, whether it's your job, for me, it's my job right now. For me, it's my friendships. It's am I pleasing the Lord in those things? Am I getting closer to the Lord in those things? Yeah. As opposed to first I'll dedicate myself to God. I'll do my morning devotions and my prayer and then I feel good. And then I can go out through the rest of my day. It's, am I meditating on his word, his scripture, throughout the entirety of my day in everything that I do? It's not God and then it's simply just God. Yeah. And that's been something the Lord's been really hitting me with these last couple of weeks is it's not God and then. Yeah. That's just been something that I've been holding on to. So when you said that, I was just like,
that's so good. Yeah.
Mind blown because the Lord's clearly, talking to us. And
it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Ladies.
any feedback? I think we went way off topic, but any feedback?
Okay. Yeah, I've been in the similar boat since, I guess, January of this year. Mm-hmm. That mindset, not just a mindset, but that active discipline of it's just God. Yeah. It's just God. And I have promises I'm desperately waiting on and in ways that have been hard and painful and joyful and just everything in between. But I've been chatting a lot with my mentor, and that's been the thing that's come up is it's just Jesus. I have to be, I know that in order to receive this promise, I have to be in a place where I can confidently say, even if it wasn't to come to pass, it's still just Jesus. And if I'm not there yet, I'm not ready to receive that promise yet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm working. I mean, I can't right at this moment say I'm fully there. I know I've grown tremendously and I can sense it. I can I hear it from the Lord, like all those things, but that's very much it is, can I let go in those ways and surrender in those ways?
Yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily giving up, but it's a willingness to surrender it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to ask why, right? Like, why does the Lord want us to get to that place? Because I think when we look at it only from like, oh, you're asking me to do this, when we begin to sit and meditate and ask the Lord, like, why do you want me to let go of this? Why do you want me to put you first? Why is that so important in order for me to receive this? And I think it brings us to this place of humility when we understand that there's a bigger picture at hand, right?
Yeah.
Like with Abraham and Isaac, the Lord gave him a promise for nations and all these things. And then Abraham brought it down to, well, I don't even have an heir. And so then the Lord was like, you know, it wasn't in the same chapter. I would think it was like 2 different chapters, but he was like, Abraham, don't be afraid. I am your exceedingly great reward. Right. And so when he got to that place, it's because I think it's a stewardship, right? Because nothing is ours. It's all the Lord's. And he just gives us the ability to be able to steward it and carry it and keep it, enjoy it, all these things. But then I think it's just this beauty where it's just like, you know, whatever the promise is, it's not the end all be all, right? Like I've been transparent about like a healing, right? And so with the healing, like I'm always scared to death because I'm like, Lord, like let me be humble in carrying that healing, right? Because I understand that it's not for like, yeah, I'm going to enjoy the benefits of it, but I understand that it's going to be an awesome thing, like literally awe-inspiring thing. And so when I think about that, I'm just like, okay, like the healing is not my vindication. It's not for my own, like I can die and in this present state and I'm still going to see the Lord, whether I'm healed 100%, whether I'm not healed 100%, like my goal is God. Right. And so then now, right, the healing now becomes a tool for the Lord and it's not a vindication for Melissa. And so when I'm able to be the steward and the vessel of the thing, then now it's just like, okay, like have it and whatever you need to do it. Right. And so I think like, cause I think one of the things that even with waiting for a husband, even with like all these things, we tend to be like, okay, like what's happening? We look at it within ourselves. And I think that's important, right? Introspection is good and all that good stuff. But I think when we look at it in the entirety of humanity, right? In Proverbs, it says that, what is it? A promise fulfilled from the Lord is like a tree of life. And so Abraham received the promise of Isaac, but it is an entire nation that's feeding off of that, right? And so it's like generations to come, generations that we won't meet on this side of heaven. And so it's not a, why are you taking this away? It's what plan am I playing in your story, you know? Yeah. And I think when we begin to do that, it's no longer like a punishment, like, oh, the Lord is not like, I don't see the Lord as my all and be all. Like, but it becomes an invitation. Yeah. And I think for a long time, Christianity has become like a punishment rather than an invitation because we just don't know how to understand the heart of a father, right? A-Rob in his Tuesday night Bible study, he was like, you get revelation when you get to understand God's heart. The more you know God's heart, the more revelation you get. And I was just like, bro, like 1000%, you know? And so I think it's that, like in the waiting, in the settling, in choosing and rejecting, like it's always come like trying to get God's heart in a matter, right? We're always talking about David. David was a man after God's own heart. It didn't mean that he was trying to be the favorite in God's heart. It was that he was trying to get God's heart. Yeah. And people treat it like he was trying to be like, oh God, like I want to, you know? No, it's David wanted to be like him.
Yeah. And it goes back to that childlike faith too. I know something that even the last few weeks the Lord showed me was childlike faith is just believing everything I say, regardless of whether you know the why or not. Yes. And like it brought back to that, like when you're a kid and your parents tell you about Santa Claus, you're not right away going, right, you know, you just trust it because it's coming from a trustworthy source. It's coming from your parents. You're not going to question who Santa Claus is because it's coming from mom and dad. They know everything. And so there's this automatic belief, there's this automatic faith that happens because your parents are the ones that describe to you this magic. And even though you've never seen it, even though there's no proof of it, there's this belief because it's coming from mom and dad. It's coming from a trustworthy source. So you're just automatically going to believe in Santa Claus. And so with God, how much more are we to trust him? Because he's not telling us fantasies or fables like Santa Claus. When he says do something, are we willing to do it regardless of the why? Are we willing to just jump into it knowing that if God tells me that to do this, there's a blessing behind it, whether for myself or for somebody else, but there's something to give, there's something behind this giving him glory, and I have to trust that response. And so I know the Lord's been testing me in that, just like little things here and there of just do what I say. Are you going to trust me, and are you going to move forward with it? And then maybe I'll reveal the why. And usually that's how it goes, is like I've been, it's, like I said, it's been little tiny things. And it's been it's kind of funny how God has just been like little things. Like, for example, this really happened a couple weeks ago. The weather where I live was this crazy big old snow blizzard. And I had plans that weekend, and the weather app was like, you know, it's going to be blizzarding all weekend. So I'm like, oh, the roads are closed. I'm not going to be able to get out of here. So I was about to cancel some plans. And the Lord was like, no, don't cancel plans. And I was like, oh, Lord. I'm not about to drive. I was like, I'm not about to drive in this. You know, the roads are closed. I wouldn't be able to get out. And so I was just like, no, I don't want this. I don't want the people I'm making plans with to like, you know, have to, you know, last minute kind of stuff. I don't want to be that person if I can do it now. And the Lord was just like, don't cancel your plans. And I was like, So I kept checking the weather app, like, and the Lord really convicted me. He just like, stop, you know, like calm down. And I was like, but why, God, why? Like, I don't want to be that person. I was like, clearly, I was like, it's okay. Like, it's fine, Lord. Like, like, but it really wasn't like this. But at that point I just put the phone down and surrendered to the Lord. And I was like, okay. And I really genuinely thought, you want me to cancel plans at last minute. That's what this is about. For some reason, there's something behind you wanting me to cancel plans at last minute. And I just believed it, you know, that's what I went with. And then the very day that I was supposed to head out, I opened the window. It's sunny, bright. The snow is melted. I checked the weather app, and it completely changed to being a sunny day. And the Lord was like, that's why. And I was like, ooh.
Got it.
And it's been like, and, you know, it's been like little things here and there, but ultimately, yeah, exactly. I was like, you could have just told me, hey, I'm going to, you know, I was like, well, are you going to like clear up the weather? But every time I checked the app, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And I was like, it keeps getting worse, Lord. Like, I don't know. So I genuinely was like, is there something behind you wanting me to cancel plans at last minute? Like, is that what this is about?
It's funny how we hyper,
yeah, exactly. But like, you know, and so it just goes back to that childlike faith though, is at the end of the day, are you just going to trust me? Because I could have canceled those plans, and then I would have felt really foolish when I opened up the curtains that morning and it was a beautiful day. But, you know, God had my back even in the little things. But also, I think we take those little things for granted, I feel like. But those are such training moments of a bigger picture.
Yes.
Of God, as I'm training your heart for something much bigger. And if you can trust me on this little thing, I can start to trust you with the bigger things. And so I'm trying to take those into consideration. And again, but I love what you're saying, because it just goes back to that childlike faith is if you're really after God's heart, you know who God is, you can trust him. And he might be asking you to do things that are way outside the norm or go against your own feelings or your own plans. But at the end of the day, are you just going to trust him? Before you need to know the why, you know? And so it just goes back to, are you going to trust the Father as a father? If he's going to tell you about Santa Claus, are you just going to jump on, you know, and believe in this fantasy that you have no proof of?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I don't know how that goes in today's topic.
Tell us whatever you want to tell us, baby girl. Yeah, what's on your heart?
Like, okay, so what God's been teaching me. And I keep bringing up this thing, but like this conference that we had at school, like God like spoke to me so clearly. He's like, everything I've been a part of, or like every room I've been in, it's like the Lord's voice is like, Kat, listen right now, take notes. And it's been so refreshing and so amazing. And out of the conference that we had at school, like at the end of it, I was like, you know, like missions is not my thing. Like, I'm not going to travel. Lord, I know you don't have that for me. If you do, like, I'll do it. But like, I kind of don't want to. And like, I just didn't feel moved by anything. But I was like, of course, like, I don't need to move to do that. Like, I just need obedience. But what I saw, like the vision that I saw in all of it was that I was like, God, like, you're so beautiful and you're enough. I was like, you're so worthy. It's that, Lord, you are so worthy of my yes that I can't tell you no. And that in everything that I do, whether I get to see the benefit of it or not, but you are just so worthy. And then I was in the middle of worship in one of the sessions, and I was just praising God, lifting my hands and saying, like, God, you're so glorious. You're so amazing. Like, thank you that you're just you. And then I saw this vision, and it was Jesus on the cross, and it was the entire stadium of people that were there. They were praising him and saying, like, Lord, you're enough, you're worthy. And then right before, like, Jesus resurrected, he, like, looked at the crowd and whispered, he said, you're worthy too. He's like, it's not just things that I'm asking of you, but that I delight in doing this, and that I invite you into this because I love you, and that you're amazing too, and that I don't make you just to obey me or just to disregard me in any way. It's that, God, you're worthy. And thank you so much that you see us as worthy enough to be loved.
That's good.
So,
That's beautiful.
I love that.
It's really beautiful. And I think it really ties into what the things that we've been saying, I think, in one way it talks about in the settling, right? Because one of the scriptures that I'm reminded of is about Jesus, right? Where it says that he didn't consider it robbery to strip himself of pretty much his deity in order to become man. And it's like, we think about it. It's honestly, this, for me, it requires such a more in-depth study as far as like settling and all that good stuff. But Jesus, in a way he settled in order to gain. Right. And there's like a humility with that. It's what you were saying when we were starting the show, where it's just like settled versus settled. Like now you're settled in. So now there's comfort. Right. And so I think there's that, right? Like there's this humbling as like a woman when they humble themselves in their marriage and they submit. Right? It's not a settling, it's a humility. Yeah. And so there's a difference between settling out of fear and there's a settling out of humility.
Yes.
And I think that's the part where we need to like get it together, right? Because society and dating and jobs and all these things, like, like for example, somebody that's just starting their life all over, they lost their job and all these things, all of a sudden they may have to start in the mailroom, like the proverbial mailroom. And so is it settling? Yeah, but it's also humbling because now you have to humble yourself in order to build yourself back up, right? And so, you're qualified for more. You can do a lot more things and all these things, but you're choosing not to discredit yourself and all these things, but you're choosing to be like, you know what? I am going to just rebuild. It's what we were talking about with the repentance earlier, when you were talking about not just burn the house, but also rebuild, right? Yeah. And so there's like this beauty, right? When you're dating, when you're searching, when you're with the Lord and all these things, I think it can be applied, like the principle can be applied where it's just like, we always talk about the heart in our podcast, right? So it's understanding the heart of a matter. It's like, are you afraid or are you, because I know for me, like in times where I felt like I was going to settle in something, it was because I wanted them to feel better. I wanted them to like see their worth. I wanted them to be like, hey, like I'm giving up of myself to show you how awesome you are and how awesome you can be. But now I was putting myself in a situation where I was never meant to put myself in, right? Because I am not the Lord. And so my value doesn't bring value to somebody else. It's the Lord's value. Yeah. And so when I think, obviously there's a lot of different like little details to this, okay? So I'm painting with a really broad brush. But essentially, like if I were to be in a relationship and I were to get crazy and I were to do all these things, that person is still a whole person, like they're still God's child. There's still all these things. And so when you think that who you are as a person is the only value that somebody else has, like that's weird. Like you need to check yourself, And so I remember like during those times, like, some of the things that I said are definitely valid, but now as I've grown and as I've seen and as I've lost, I'm beginning to see like, you know what, like I think I was just like neutralizing my brain, to be okay with where I was. And I'm so grateful for friendships, right? That were just like, bruh, like, what you doing?
I like what you're saying though. If you feel like you have to give up something of yourself in order to make this person feel like they're loved and valued, that's something that we talked about too, is at the end of the day, there is a pride in yourself in that. And it feels like humility because I'm sacrificing so much to give you X, Y, Z. And I'm not saying that sacrifice is it's definitely not wrong in a relationship, but when you feel like you're giving up something of yourself, your boundaries, your value, your worth in order to make this person feel special.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're settling ultimately, especially if they're not giving back.
Yeah.
And I remember I was telling you, the Lord revealed the pride and the selfishness in that, because I didn't realize that I was really attracted to toxic men, more so because of my own pride and my own selfishness, because I was the one that was encouraging them and uplifting them and giving them, all of these encouraging words. And yeah, you can go after that promotion. Yeah, you can do this. Yeah. I felt like their inspiration and their muse to do better. And I really liked being that girl that was, you give me a reason to be a better man. Yeah. And I loved that role. And I didn't realize that until recently, where the Lord was just really kind of like humbling me. And I was healing from my last relationship, where God was just like, that's my job ultimately. And that's that place of pride where he was really breaking that down of, I get to be someone's muse. I get to be their inspiration. And hearing you make me want to be a better man was just like, like I was really feeding that pride. And so the Lord was just like, that's my job. That's my role. And it's cute. And that's for the romantic comedies. And that's for the, that's for the movies. But in reality, it's just a really toxic role to be in, because I'm not saying that a woman can't be a positive inspiration for a man to do better, but it's when you go looking for that and you go looking for the potential, and you're the one that gets to build that person up, and it's because of me that he's this way and he's so much better. And it's really a place of pride, and that's not sustainable in a relationship at all. That really is reserved for the Lord and only the Lord. And so if a man or a woman is not seeking that in the Lord, who is the only sustainable source, and they're looking for that in a person, you just breed this very unstable, toxic, because we're all people. We all have faults.
Yeah, absolutely. Me
being a human being, I can't sustain a positive attitude and constantly be this source of encouragement and uplifting and inspiration. I can't do that. I'm a human being. And so if I'm looking for a person who needs that, we're not going to be in a very long-term sustainable place, because they're constantly looking to me as their source of life and inspiration and encouragement. And I can't, as a human being, sustain that. That's only something that God can do.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping would come out. Because that was, when you said that in our conversation, I was like, bro, like that's profound. But I didn't know how to word it, because obviously it's your story. But yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think it really like should sober people up, right? Where it's just like, the toxic and all that stuff, like it's so important to, especially if you've had that pattern, to just be like, okay, me. Let me start with me, but yeah, I think, let me make sure that we've covered it all.
Can I share something?
Absolutely.
Dive in there.
I think there's also like one of you kind of touched on it, but the submission versus the settling. And understanding where that, that is. And that took me time in marriage to find, where am I submitting versus feeling like I'm settling, And it was actually seeing my parents and their relationships, and how my mom expected something of Justin that I didn't expect, and realizing that it was her insecurities coming out in her relationship. And it messed with me, because I was having such a hard time pinpointing, like, wait, am I settling, or am I just not seeing this in the submission type of way, And then the male perspective, the godly male leader, and knowing that is biblical, and not having grown up with that entirely, with divorced parents and things like that and whatnot. And so that's a big thing too, is knowing where that submission lies and where the settling shouldn't be.
That's really good.
But yeah, that was just what was coming to mind for me is and that boils down to accountability and having that mentor. I had a mentor walk me through my relationship with Justin, like, not that she was in the relationship with us, but essentially, I mean, I was sharing a lot with her, because it was so new, and I had not been in a relationship like that before. And so she really helped guide me through whether, this was settling or not. And obviously I got to a point where I knew I wasn't settling.
Yeah.
Like I had, but what I wanted and needed in the relationship was different than what my mom wanted or needed in hers. And so
It's so key.
being able to know that difference was important, because otherwise I would have thought that I was settling, and at this point I know obviously I'm not, and what the Lord has done and showed us and everything. But yeah, I just think that's key
That's
too.
really good.
That's awesome.
Using other people's expectations to measure your expectations. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's so important, like to be aware of, like in any relationship, right? To be like, well, they should be doing this. And it's like, but I'm okay with doing that.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
Or vice versa. So it really is quite crazy. And I think you said it in one of the earlier episodes where it's just like, everybody's like calling, everybody's relationship, everybody's boundaries is like different, know? And so it's important to be fully aware of that and have mentors and have the accountability and have your relationship with the Lord to be like, okay, this is what you're calling me to. Help me stick to that. Is it always easy?
No.
No. Is it always worth it?
Yes.
And I love that. I love that this sparked a self-reflecting thing. 'Cause how do you know you're settling? It immediately went to. We all immediately went to. How are you responding? How are you taking responsibility for yourself? And what is your identity in Christ? And what does that look like for you? Because this could easily be a topic where we just jump in. Well, if they are doing X, Y, Z,
which we've done, and then there's definitely a healthy balance of knowing how you should be treated. And, but you're not going to know how you should be treated, and you're not going to know what those is it submission versus settling kind of thing. You're not going to know that until something we repeat constantly is know your identity in Christ. And it's there that you can establish what you deserve, what your worth is, what your value is, and where your boundaries lie. And ultimately, how do you know you're settling? Is this person bringing the best out in you? And are you bringing the best out in this person? Is there intentionality on both ends? And it just comes back to, you can't establish any of those things until you know who you are in Christ and what your value and worth is through Him. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that you ladies would like to add to this?
It's all over the place.
All over the place.
Can I go all over the place?
Absolutely.
Go for it.
I was thinking about what we were starting with in this episode, in the hierarchy, I guess you could say, with God and then husband and family and stuff, and the understanding that it's God, right?
Yeah.
So I've had this story on my heart. Like, I think I just need to share it with my students. And it's probably why it's just like stayed with me. But Esther just keeps coming up in my mind, and how she was willing to go to the death essentially for the Jews by sharing what she shared in the word, by, if essentially how the song does it is, if I perish, make me an answer to the nations. And that's what she committed to. Like, she committed to, no matter what happens, I'm doing this for the people. But it's that there's that parallel there of she was willing to go as far as she needed to, or she knew to. Yeah. And that was it. Like, it was that connection with the Lord that no matter what happens here, I know that this is how I need to be obedient to that. And it's that same concept here, right? Like, I'll just speak for myself, and those promises that I'm talking about is am I willing to say, like, if I perish, I perish, like, but what happens here is what's most important, right? And it really does come back to the settling and submission situation and conversation too. Like, if it's just, for me, it's Esther. Like, if I can get to that point of sharing or just saying those words the way Esther did, like, then I know that I'm at a place where, okay, this is where God needs me to be, But.
Which makes total, like, that's beautiful, and it makes total sense, right? Because I think there's this also like internal wrestling where, especially when you're waiting for a promise, where you're just like, okay, but if I stop hyperfixating on this thing, does that mean that I don't have the faith for it anymore? Does that mean that I've given up? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because there's a time where you wrestle with the Lord, absolutely 100%. But then there's those times like, And I think I don't remember if I shared it here, but like for now, I'm at this place where it's just like, I remembered one day somebody was praying for me and they prayed for healing. And I was like, oh yeah, like I still need that. Like I totally forgot about that because, like Hebrews, right? It talks about entering the rest of the Lord and also the Psalms. And so, or Deuteronomy, maybe both, but it talks about that. And it's just like, there comes a point where even First Peter where it says, cast your cares before the Lord. And so it's just like you enter into a rest where it's just like, it's not that I've forgotten and it's not that I don't want it, but you're my rest now,
Yeah.
And so I think in what you're sharing about Esther, where it's just like, in a way she was able to enter a rest, right? Because when we're wrestling with what do I do? What should I do? And blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, like the path becomes clear. It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm at rest,
Yeah.
knowing that I'm going to do what I need to do and I'm going to focus on what I need to focus on. And then the rest is just going to play itself out,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's revelation right now is really confirming for some things I've been like mentally battling. But thank you. That was good.
You're welcome. That'll be $30. That'll be an In-N-Out burger. Just kidding. Kitty, anything else that you would like to add?
Nope.
I want to ask you this before we end it. So, you're in college, you're with your Gen Z people, you're with your all these things. Like, what is something that you see, right, that you personally see as far as like the state of relationships and intimacy in that generation? Like, is it hard? Is it cold? Like, what is it?
Well, it's a Christian college, so ring by spring. Quite a there's somebody on my floor who just got engaged.
Are
and
you
I'm like,
serious?
That's a thing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
stereotype is a thing.
But I know they've also been dating for like at least 6 years.
Oh,
so
no, it's a little late. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
I think there's a lot of romanticizing of relationships but I think the biggest thing about it is that people see it as companionship to be comforted inside of a marriage and not as a thing of like the book that you were bringing up of like, oh, marriage in the light of eternity. Like, this is not companionship for me, that I would have security in this, that God would give me his security through this marriage or through this job. It's that people, it's that they don't see that, or that it's not recognized a lot, that it's for God. Like, this is supposed to mirror the covenant between Jesus and his bride. Like, this is a covenant on earth. And like, while God is like beautiful and merciful, and that he gives us the desires of our heart, like we do get romance in a marriage. We do get children that we get to bear. We do get companionship in that. And like, those are great things, but those are not the purpose of it. Yeah. And I see a lot of people, like going between relationships. I don't want to say like, serial dating a lot, but there's just, I don't see a lot of like purpose in how they're going about it. And I've seen a few couples, like friends of mine or people that I've worked with before, and I'm like, oh, like I can see how you guys complement each other very well, and like how God can make something out of this. But the way that they're going about it doesn't seem to be that way. It's just companionship and relief in the midst of like a really busy life, and like, Lord, could you bless this and give me this, rather than, Lord, I'm seeking you and thank you that you gave me this to better glory, to another way be amplified to glorify you.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah, and I think we're also young, so we're just like, like we're gonna get married in a few years, or we're gonna get married right now, and it's like, there's a thing in my mind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm only 20, gonna be 21. I'm like, I have so many years ahead of me. I was like, God, you're gonna give me, I'm like, I'm just barely starting out now, even though it feels like I'm finishing my life. I'm like, Lord, I'm running the race, I'm coming to the end. He's like, you barely finished the first mile. Calm down.
He's like, you're fine.
Yeah. So,
and was warm up.
Yeah.
That's good.
Starts bawling.
Yeah, right.
So with that,
thanks for enlightening us and keeping us
that's
young.
actually good. Yeah,
I'm still young.
Sliding scales. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We're sorry, and at the same time, you're welcome.
Yeah, that was deep.
It was a good episode. So the tip of the week is with Shekinah.
Oh yeah, it's me. I wrote down, take your multivitamin.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but honestly, I was just thinking about it, and I was trying to think of one, and I looked around my apartment and I saw my little multivitamins, and I was like, take care of yourself. And that might look different for everyone, because some of you might be taking too many supplements and you need to calm down. But ultimately, just I think physical health is so important to God. He does talk about it in the word. And I think we are triune beings who need to take care of our triune self. So in the physical body area, identify an area that you know you can do better in and just take a step towards that in bettering yourself. If that's taking a multivitamin, if that's going for a walk, if that's whatever it is. I think too many people overwhelm themselves with new healthy habits and they go all in, overwhelm themselves and then quit and go back to eating Oreos for dinner.
Yep.
It's a really common mindset to do. I'm an all or nothing person. So that's what I tend to do is I just overwhelm my body. And
Same.
Yep. But it can start with a small habit. Just start something small. Do something, drink some tea, drink whatever. Just implement a new habit in your day. It can be something simple and build from there.
I like
That's my
it.
tip.
Awesome.
I like it a lot. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you next week when we finally interview this young lady and the mysterious popular Justin. See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.